Walaikum salam to everyone. Hope everyone's good tonight. Now, this lecture tonight is going to be a little bit dark, so not necessarily appropriate for children. I will do the best I can to keep the language as clean as possible. But this is part of a series I talked to Sister Layla about, where we're introducing what I call Muslim version 2.0, the upgrade as our masters have planned for what they want the Islam of the future to be. And tonight we're going to look at one of the men who spearheaded this. Last week, a brother had requested me to speak on this topic, and I obliged. I told him at the time 100%. And over the course of Saturday and Sunday, I decided that this deserved its own day because the material is just so vast. And this is going to open us up down several different roads that I intend to take us down over the next months leading up to Ramadan, inshallah. So tonight's lecture is called Enter the Top G. For those of you not familiar with who that is, you will be very familiar by the end of the night. So I want to start off with an ayah, set of ayahs from the Quran that's going to kind of tell us where we're going with this next few episodes. Because you have put me in error, I will surely sit and wait for them on your straight path. Then I will come to them from before them and from behind them, and on their right and on their left, and you will find them most ungrateful. You can find that in Surah Araf 16 and 17. The shaitan's warnings should carry extra meaning in the modern day world because we're constantly living in a society of confusion, of illusion, where you're seeing, as this ayah says, people want to be on the straight path, but on that straight path, the shaitan is waiting to approach you, to attack you, to lead you astray from all sides. So I'm going to paint that picture as we open up. In 2021, I noticed this. I've been a Muslim since 2010. So in 2021, during my period of keeping up with social media and the goings of Islam in the apologetics community and the momentum, we had a lot going on for us. Western youth, and in particular from my community, white Western youth, were turning to Islam throughout Europe, throughout America in record numbers. By 2022, I'd say this momentum hits peak. We were seeing basically a lot of the need, particularly for traditional roles in the household and society and masculinity. The West is suffering from a crisis of masculinity. Men are being raised in single parent homes without fathers, without guidance. These men are growing up to be 22, 23, and they have no clue how to be a man. They're being taught in the school system that the traits of a man are weak, that men should abolish their masculinity. We are living in an increasingly gynocentric and feminist society. These men have low prospects nowadays of even finding a life partner or wife. This has all been perpetrated from the highest of highs to basically destroy the fabric of Western society. We are seeing men now more than ever turning to drugs, pills, video game addictions, pornography. All these things are their way of attempting to mask the pain. Their right of being a man has been taken from them. You know, like I said, from the time you're growing up all the way through the school system, you're told being a man is a sin. It's something to be ashamed from. If you're showing any masculine properties, you have toxic masculinity. We see with dating now, young men increasingly single. And we're not condoning the Western standard of dating, but in a culture so open like the Western society is, it's very telltale, where people are having more zina than ever before at any time in human history. They're having more access to nudity than any time during human history. But yet you're seeing among young men in the West, 80% of them in some studies in their late 20s are identifying themselves as single. We see suicide rates for young men continue to peak around the time of COVID. The lockdowns did a major toll, on young men. And we saw the suicide and drug dependency rates during the COVID pandemic even higher than they were traditionally. Again, these left out youth, they were seeking balance. They were seeking normalcy. They are looking for a world that made sense, and Islam was resonating with their hearts. And I noticed, as I mentioned, this peaking around 2022. You were seeing people turning to Islam, as I mentioned, many shahadas. I saw so many shahadas, some done by the man who's with me tonight, gracing us with his company. So many shahadas, done in the masjid here where I am, of Western men, white men, African-American men in particular, old and young, but a lot of young people were coming in. This is obviously not what they want. And as that opening ayah suggests, you want to find the straight path. Along that path, there is going to be some challenges. And then something started to happen, in 2023. We started witnessing a ton of, I call them mysterious conversions, filling up the social media. We were seeing so many people now converting to Islam, people you may have never even heard of 2 to 3 months prior, all of a sudden are larger than life. One of the individuals, of course, we're talking about tonight, but there are many others. So we saw all these social media influencers. I can't even name how many there are. There's just so many. I just saw another one today, a female doing videos about Quran and Sunnah with makeup, no hijab, with other things revealed, typical Western style clothing, and being presented as some revert authority on Islam. And this is all setting us up, again, as I talked, for Muslim 2.0. So people have, before we move on, this idea, and this all stems from the backlash against the newspaper industry and later on the television media, that people view television media as justifiably so, and newspaper print media as being completely controlled. They knew Hollywood, for the most part, people were starting to discover this, was completely controlled. But people, till recently still, believe that these social media personalities that you never even heard of a few months ago, and now all of a sudden they're everywhere. They've got hundreds of thousands of views, hundreds of thousands of subscribers, in some cases millions. They still hang on to this notion that these people are somehow independent, that they are just hardworking. They worked hard and they put the videos and they hustled and they knew the algorithms. It's all a load of nonsense, as we are going to see. Every few months, as I said, a new one rises from nowhere. So uneducated, impressionable youth see these influencers as experts in these fields. Why not? They've got millions of views. They've got a camera in front of them. They become the ambassadors of these viewpoints. If I want to learn about Islam, I'm going to go to this guy, or I'm going to go to this person. If I want to learn about politics, I'll go to this person or that. And it'll become immediately identifiable to someone who's new, impressionable, and uneducated. Oh, that Islam, that's what Andrew Tate does. That's what he believes. That's what Sneeko believes. And this is very dangerous, as we are going to see. Because tonight, like I mentioned, we're going to look at one of those individuals, a man who literally rose from nowhere. And Christian apologists, atheists I've heard, have dubbed him the face of Islam. He has been anointed by our opponents who spend countless hours and resources with half-truths and lies and slanders, bashing our religion, bashing the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, bashing every aspect of who we are and what we believe, misrepresenting it. These people are identifying this man as the face of Islam. At least they did very strongly in 2023 to 2024. This is also a man who you'll notice, for those of you familiar with him, he was defended to the death by numerous people in our community. Uneducated social media followers will watch this, hang on every single word these other guys say. They're justifying him. They are defending him. They are platforming him. This man had no issues getting booked on prominent Muslim podcasts, prominent Muslim social media channels. He was everywhere. So when you hear one person say he's the face of Islam and you're seeing all these things, it matches in that mind of that impressionable youth. I mean, there's been times I've been told, and I ran into many issues with some of the Muslims in my community, particularly the young people, who called me a hater, They said, you don't really know, you're prejudging him. I even had him, by one of these young brothers, had compared him to Umar. We are going to see the life of this individual tonight and see if that is a fair comparison. I think you know the answer. And he became, again, this kind of leader of this young Muslim generation. People celebrated this. We have Andrew Tate. You know, we have our big guy, our big celebrity, and he's Muslim like us. This became kind of a sort of a rallying cry. And it opens up a lot of problems, which we'll be covering in the following weeks, of the need, I feel, in the Muslim community for celebrity validation. Anytime a celebrity hints or speaks of converting to Islam without looking at what they're doing, without looking at their behavior, they are immediately, mashallah, mashallah, on their platform. And they're opening up all of our youth to a very, very sinister and degenerate message. In 2023, in 2022, I never heard of this individual. I had no clue, and I'm active in the circles. If I knew Sheikh Ibrahim and Sister Layla, inshallah, I would have been on videos back then. I was always on the pulse of social media. I never heard of this guy until the summer of 2022. That was the first time I ever heard his name. And then within a matter of months, I saw him everywhere. By 2023, he was the third most searched man in the world on Google. The third. And again, Islam, that's what Andrew Tate does. We're talking major clout here. Only Donald Trump, and I cannot remember the other, I think it was Taylor Swift, had actually had more searches during that period of time. He was third. So many people were just hungering for this man and what he had to say, and they were hanging on his statement. As he famously said, if you book me, you're guaranteed 1 million views for your podcast. So how did he get so famous? How did he acquire so much wealth? We're going to get into all of that here. So for all these troubled youth that I highlighted in the opening, Andrew Tate promises something. The youth that seeked Islam for the masculinity, for the traditional roles, were guided to him. He sells himself as this champion of male virtue, champion of male values, of being tough. And a lot of the things he says are true, are rooted in truth, but hidden by numerous, obviously, falsehoods. He convinced these men that careers in the sciences, in engineering, and any type of job was for losers. Your father is a loser. Your uncle is a loser. Hell, the Prophet ﷺ, by his standards, would have been a loser. Umar would have been a loser. The only way you're not a loser is to be a social media influencer and an entrepreneur exactly like him. The only way to obtain a wife or any affection from the opposite sex, the prospect of marriage only in our religion, has to be like him. Well, what kind of man is he? Let's see what they do, here, as I could say. So you've got, again, there's a need, there's a desire, there's a vacuum. It has to be filled. These young men are looking for somewhere to go. They're lonely. They're down and out, because of the world that was created by the exact same people who made Andrew Tate the third most searched person in Google in 2023. So you got problems, you're looking for solutions. Here it is. How big is the problem at this time among the youth? In 2023, we're going to look at a survey here. 500 Australian teenage boys were asked. 28% of them professed to looking up to him. 36% found him relatable. Another British survey, British males 16 to 17 would find him positive to the tune of 45%. Almost half of the British men asked about this man in 2023 saw him as positive. In other studies, they found that 21% of 7 and 11-year-olds between that age demographic, 1 in 5 knew who this man was. 43 to 53% of your 11 to 18-year-olds knew who he was. So for the older people here, if you don't know who he is, it's a very good chance your children do. And it's a very good chance they are being subjected to the poison that we are going to talk about later. Correlations were also established in another study between the horrible and down view of marriage and relationships by people who had listened to him. People who listened to him viewed women as predatory. We're going to talk about that later. They're only here to steal your money. They're evil. You must flip it around on them. And you must control and enslave the women. I lie to you not. We're going to look at the quotes. We're going to look at the words right out of the horse's mouth later on that one. Also, they were 5 times more likely, youth who watched him regularly, to believe that violence against their fellow man was justifiable. Hurting people was okay because you were showing your masculinity. So you see again how this works. Masculinity is attacked. Good qualities of masculinity, which we're going to discuss. Let's fill that vacuum. Let's give them this fake, phony, anti-human version of masculinity, again, to fill the place. So the next section we are going to be looking at, where did he come from? We are going to be looking at the people who are behind him. We are going to look at his ideology. We are going to look at his websites. And then we're going to end that section looking at his conversion to Islam that happened in the end of 2023. We are going to progress there and look at him post-Muslim. And we are going to see, did the behaviors, attitudes, activities, did they change? Did Islam change this man? Or, again, going to my original points, was something more deeper taking place here? So what we know, Andrew Tate was born December 1st, 1986 at the Walter Reed Medical Facility in Washington, D.C. Now, those of you who know me or familiar with my work, I'll be getting into a lot of this in the future. It is amazing when you look at entertainers and actors, particularly songwriters and musicians, band members, that the amount of them who come from military backgrounds, it is too much to ignore. So we find this gentleman here, born of a military father named Emery Tate. He was basically in the military along with his wife, Eileen Tate, who was a catering professional. His father, what we do know, was an international master of chess, and he would grow up in Chicago and later be raised in Goshen, Indiana. Now, one of the things of Andrew Tate, very similar to Barack Obama, he was born of biracial roots. And one of the big traps that the Zionist-controlled media uses is they love people who are biracial because they really can just eradicate criticism of them in 2 simple ways. If you're a white person who criticizes Andrew Tate, you can be called a racist. If you're an African-American or a person of African descent and you criticize Andrew Tate, you're a sellout. See how that works? And it's, again, very, very clever. They use this to perfection during the Obama years. He is able to generally say, again, anything he wants, and these always serve as a way of safeguarding and protecting him. He would claim, and this is, again, we're establishing his credibility or lack thereof, he would make several claims on video of his high IQ. It's one of the big things. You've got to listen to me. I've got one of the highest IQs in the world. I'm one of the most intelligent men that you're ever going to meet. He says he's the youngest state champion, and he was beating routinely 12 to 16-year-old players while he was the age of 10. Well, there's a problem with that. Chess championships, like any other type of sport, they have recorded records. There they exist. You can look it up. You can see, again, that this is completely fabricated. He never competed in any of these tournaments. Some of the tournaments he claimed did not even exist. And the only record they had showed that he lost to 3 out of 5, tournaments. He later, of course, admitted that he quit chess and moved on to other ventures. So already, again, fabricating of the past. He initially said that his father was not in the military. After being cornered on this matter, he later had to say, yeah, my father was in the CIA. No problem there. But he was one of the good ones. That kind of is really where it went. So after his parents separated, his journey, which would take him to stardom, took him to England, the home of his mother, and to Luton in particular. It's here where he would grow up and become educated and, of course, obtain his first charges of rape and his first bout with superstardom. So again, young Andrew would begin this kickboxing career. And this is where he kind of really got known. In 2005, he would actually retire in 2014. Unlike his chess career, his kickboxing championships are verifiable. He did win 4 of them. During his time, he also worked mysteriously for television and advertising in that industry for himself, which is highly suspicious when you look at the fact that he was a kickboxer. He was someone who was now being involved with television, media, advertising, honing his skills later on that he would use. Now, he would formally start his passion in the mid-2010s. So we're looking around 2015, 2016. What was that passion? Pornography. Tate would call this, it was the ultimate life hack. These are his quotes. They're right there with his name in the Twitter. He would say, you subjugate women for profit as a way out of the matrix. So his concept of the matrix, based loosely on the film going by the same name, is that we all live in a control system, a control grid that forces you to go to college, become a family man, raise your children. You know, all this is the matrix. Obviously, he goes on to talk about government control in the banks, a lot of the stuff that is actually true. He will sprinkle that stuff in with the falsities. But the ultimate way out is to subjugate women and get yourself out. And that will become the theme of his work for the next 10 years, was all about how to manipulate and control women. He would start his cam business around this time, which became his main, how he got all this untold amounts of wealth that he's been able to accumulate. He would start off, small, his girlfriend, his brother's girlfriend, they ended up getting to about 75 total cam girls in his peak. Now, what are these cam girls? They basically would perform, obviously, nudity, sex acts, sex simulation on video for men. Andrew Tate would later admit, it's on all recorded, that he actually was the guy operating the keyboard while these women were talking to the men. He would be sitting there while these women were doing what they were doing, and he would be typing, on his keyboard, telling the men all kinds of perverted and sexual related things and fantasies and all of this, whatever's good for business. He was willing, obviously, to do it. Now, he still wanted to get even more fame. He knew that in order to go to the next level he wanted to go, he needed to get more known. The kickboxing is not very widely followed. It's not like professional boxing or MMA. I couldn't tell you, obviously, any kickboxers right now. Currently, it's not very famous type of sport. But he would get on a British reality show called Big Brother, undoubtedly through his television advertising contacts. And he would only last on the show for a couple of days. Now, the official reason they let him off the show was they found a sexual recording, pornographic film of him and his, at the time, girlfriend, where he was choking her and hitting her with the belt. Now, this video is out there. I don't suggest anyone watching it, but it has been verified. It has been there. I've not seen it. I've seen still shots, which was enough, and the official release or reports on that. Tate claimed it was consensual. No charges were brought to him by the female, so needless to say, we probably believe it was consensual, but it was cover for something that was going on behind that was a little bit more serious. There were multiple rape allegations stemming in the UK, claiming that Andrew Tate had strangled and sexually assaulted a woman. This case would be closed in 2019. The details are pretty much impossible to find. Whether it was a settlement, who knows? But this is the official reason that his television career on this reality show was cut short. So at this time, almost immediately, Andrew realizes, I need to go somewhere. The West is too strict, as he's going to tell you. So he moved to Romania. Romania being a poor country, lots of eligible, unemployed women, ripe for the picking. They wanted to grow their cam business here, and he felt that this was the best possible place. Tate would also admit, I'm not a rapist. I just like the idea of being able to do whatever I want. So when asked why did he move to Romania, he tells you right there, I came here. I didn't do it. But if I want to, I can do it in Romania because I will be able to do whatever I want. He's talked about this at length in numerous videos. He said, in Romania, I love the corruption. I can tickle the palm of the police officer with some money, and I'm not going to go down for anything that I do. So he had to take his business away from the UK into Romania. And he would continue doing so-called God's work here in Romania. In 2019, he would launch what he called a PhD course. And that's not the traditional PhD that we are familiar with. This PhD course, official name is the Pimping Hose degree. This was a course that he would charge $450. And the premise would be how to take a girl who wants to be your girlfriend, who wants to date you. She's enthralled with your wealth. She loves your social standing. How to take that energy and get her to be a sex slave for you. This is what you would get if you went into Andrew Tate's PhD course. How step by step. And he would even go through in the chats and go through and tell you, I got this girl. This is what I did here. This is what I did here. He'd break down the scenarios, explain to these young, frustrated men, this is how you're going to do it. So at the beginning of its popularity in 2021, he would take this and really institutionalize it. He put really some amazing muscle, behind this operation. He would launch Hustlers University. In Hustlers University, for a $50 a month fee, you could learn crypto tips from supposed experts. You could learn drop shipping, copywriting, other businesses making opportunities for yourself from his team of experts. He would amass at his peak during this time 168,000 students. For $50, that's $8 million a month. So, when he's peaking at that, you can say that he's earning between 8 million all the way to about 5 to 8 million, depending on the fluctuations there. This program has also been cited by many people who are there, filled with scammers, other improprieties. Now, he's recently changed the name of Hustlers University to the real world. He repackaged it. So a lot of the people who go there and pay that $50, again, it's a carrot on a stick. He's dangling the dream. You want to be like me? You want to have the body, the women massaging you 24/7. You want to have the cars. This is how you do it. You come to my website, you pay the $50 a month. You're going to learn how to make all this money by copywriting, by drop shipping. You make some money there, definitely, but not that kind of money. But again, it was false hope. He was selling a dream to these impressionable, vulnerable young men. Later, as we're about to see, a lot of them Muslim, men as well. We're learning these things. So the concept comes from all of this of Tateism. Bravado, image, wealth, massive amounts of young men. They're dying again to be part of this. They want this. Andrew Tate's philosophy works. Look what it did for him. They would constantly show testimonials of other young men. Look at how far they've come in their lives, different members of his organization. Men believed this was obtainable. So Andrew Tate launched something more sinister. He called it the War Room. And the War Room would cost you a whopping $8,000 per year to be a member of this War Room. Now, the War Room was sold as being the creme de la creme, the peak of the peak. This is where the top men in the world hang out. You could be a member of the War Room. And here you would gain a deeper understanding of his ideology, but also members of the War Room who later realized it was a sham would share something else quite important. Who was actually behind this? Who was the real architect? Was it Andrew Tate saying all these things, creating all this content, or was it someone else? Now, War Room chats that are available online, several researchers have gotten members anonymously to take screenshots, and they leaked a lot. We're going to look through a lot of that content later today. So this whole thing was premised, again, of teaching young men how to manipulate good girls. They liked good girls, they said. They wanted the Christian girls. They wanted the religious girls. They wanted particularly virgin girls, as they would highlight, and turn them into sex slaves. And this is when I started studying him, and I came across this. The first thing before I got to what I'm going to unveil later, I said this stuff is direct CIA mind control, 100%. When I was watching and reading these chats, being familiar with it, I said, this guy's got to have somebody behind him. This is too sophisticated, for him. And it's what we call Pavlovian conditioning. Pavlov had done experiments on animals, particularly dogs. And what he had found was that if you rang a dinner bell and you brought the dog his food, the dog would start to salivate, obviously, at the sight of food. You would do this 4 to 5 times. And by the 6th time, you'd ring that bell again, but you wouldn't bring the food. but the same response of the salivation, the craving, the preparing the body for digestion was occurring in the dog. They would call this Pavlovian conditioning or the Pavlovian response. Andrew Tate and his team mastered doing this to women to ultimately get them to be your slave and your sex slave. We are going to go on and show exactly how this happens. This will lead to several of his followers being arrested, brought up on charges of domestic violence and sex trafficking. We're going to look at a couple of those individuals later, but this stuff works for Andrew Tate. It works for the big guy behind him because they have millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. They have all this access and material resources. They're good looking. They're big, strong guys. It's a lot easier for them to be able to convince impressionable young ladies. It's also a lot easier for them to get away with it when it doesn't work out so well. But if you're the average guy and you're trying this stuff in the United States of America or in England, you're going to end up getting arrested. You're going to end up getting charged. You're probably going to be turned in for assault. It's like, but again, for Andrew Tate, it works just fine. By paying this $8,000, you get what extra exactly? Well, you get exclusive access to more Andrew Tate courses, which you have the opportunity to pay for. So by paying your $8,000 a month, you think you're going to get this amazing network. You're getting nothing but sex trafficking tips and Pavlovian mind control conditioning. You're also going to get the opportunity to buy more Andrew Tate courses for $350 to $500 each, teaching you better ways of doing this. You also get the opportunity to pay to go to live events and crowdfund numerous of his actual adventures or his business ventures, if you will. So, as I mentioned earlier about the hidden hand here, so behind the scenes, investigators talked to several people from the war room, got a lot of these chats recorded, and what they found was the head of the war room, the chief, was not Andrew Tate. It was a gentleman by the name of Miles Sonkin, who goes by the name now of Iggy Semmelweis. Now, what do we know about this particular gentleman? It gets a lot more kooky and creepy as we're moving on. Iggy was born in Chicago to a television psychic, mother, born of a Jewish background, no accident or coincidence there. He's thought to have met Tate around 2018, early 2019, which lines up because this is right around the same time that Andrew Tate went on to this war room, went on to this Hustlers University scam. This Iggy was part of multiple cults during the 1980s, ran out of India, dealing with manipulation, mind control, neuro-linguistic programming. He refers to himself in this war room as the master of spells. So much so that Andrew Tate even talked about himself. And Iggy is not like Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate is very muscular. He's very tall. Iggy is a very slender, older man in his 60s, long gray beard. He looks like a wizard, needless to say. But he said that his look, his tone, he could change your thoughts. Iggy had once told one of the war room members when he said, "You've changed everything about me." He said, "No, I didn't. I went into your brain and I rearranged the attic. I taught you the correct way, of thinking." So he had studied both hypnotism and this neuro-linguistic programming, and he lived in Japan under the name of Douglas Hall. He called himself the self-proclaimed pickup artist, the greatest in the world. He did courses teaching American men how to manipulate Japanese women. Largely the same thing that we are going to see here today. And when you would come into the war room, what he would do was he would introduce you to a set of books. Now, do we think that the Quran and the Sunnah, obviously were in those books? Well, here's the top three that he recommended. Book number one to be read in this order would be known as The Predatory Female. Now, I've read that book cover to cover, very sure, about 170 pages. The premise of this book is that all women are predators. All women are here to steal from you, to use. By the time you read the book, you really, as a man, you think, I've got no shot of love. I've got no shot of stability, of a marriage. Every woman's going to take my money. She's going to dump me, take my kids. All these different, things that you find from this. So it's really a very anti-female book, which is all, like you said, in this order. So you go from that one. Part two is called How to Dump Your Wife. This book expands on this one, teaching men how to end their marriage and keep their assets. Whether the marriage is bad or good, all marriages are bad. The woman is going to scorn you in the end. You must basically get out of it now. How to dump your wife. And the third memorable book in the trilogy was known as Pimpology, the 48 Laws of the Game, which is a book dealing with psychological control over both women and life. So this, again, seeing all this stuff, you read through this series of books. If you're a young, impressionable man, particularly you're a Muslim man, Andrew Tate is Muslim, I want to learn, are you going to get confused and think this is any way, shape, or form similar to, Islamic, values? You can see how the young person's mind is going to be extremely confused. Now, another way their tactics work is if you see Iggy, he is not a handsome man. He's very quite creepy, older gentleman. Andrew Tate is his prince. He's the photogenic one. He's the one, the fast talker. He's the good looking one, the one that, the young men are going to say, I want to be like that guy. Fit, in shape, kickboxer, confident, brash, bravado, the cars, the money, the women. You look at Iggy, no, probably not much so. So again, it was a perfect vehicle to release this very demonic propaganda. Andrew Tate became the mouthpiece. This Iggy also, still to this day, is a close friend of Andrew Tate. Iggy often said and called for the genocide of Palestinians. And not only that, he said genocide the men and do what with the women? I think we would already gather by now, looking at these men's character, make them slaves. These are quotes that have been recorded from him. And Andrew Tate continued to socialize, be photographed with this man long after his Islamic conversion. So you imagine here a supposed Muslim man is best friends and business partners with a man who says genocide the Palestinians and enslave their women. So again, we get on to documented chats. The final goal of this Tateism, as defined by Iggy in recorded chats, was to turn women into what they call the FSS. This is the key goal of life. Not finding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not being the best person, not making your community better. No. The ending goal of life is FSS. What is that? Female sex slavery. This is the end goal. And again, the other aspect of him is another recorded statement that he said, here I quote, I take it as a sacred duty to remove all money from the pockets of idiots. And that is exactly what I train men to do, is to develop a skill set to liberate money from the pocket of idiots while they smile and hand it over happily. So female sex slavery, taking the money of weak men. See the circle here? Weak men come to Tate, they give him their money, right? This guy's saying right here, this is our goal. And yet the men keep coming. The circle keeps continuing, always searching for a fresh crop of young, weak, depressed, down and out, no purpose in their life, emotional men, guide them, to this. The Tate Empire would continue to grow during this period of time. He would be supported by numerous members of the right-wing establishment, Alex Jones being one. Alex Jones would do his best to go visit famous podcasters that he attended to get Andrew Tate on. The more Andrew Tate was on, the more people sign up for the classes, the more they sign up for Hustlers University, the more they go to the war room, obviously. He was in turn offering these men sexual favors from the numerous women who were working in his residency. Obviously, it was a kind of a quid pro quo, relationship, as we call it. Another character was a very big conservative blogger, goes by the name of Mike Cernovich. Cernovich would go to the war room to sell his products to these idiots that Iggy was referencing earlier. If anyone's familiar with this guy, I don't recommend looking it up, but his sexual degeneracy and perversions are well documented online. He's not someone by any means who is a role model. Now, some of the other famous people or semi-famous people that have come from this war room, one of them goes by the name of Vlad Obo, aka Joe Lampton. He's been recorded as saying, beat her up. I slapped every female I was with because I'm me. What masculinity this is. Build a life where you don't slap people because it's a choice, not because you have to. So you want to build a life where you don't slap people as a choice. You want to make it to where you don't have to, but you always have, obviously, the option. These comments were roundly applauded and celebrated, obviously, by Andrew Tate, all on record. Vlad would go on to brag that he milks his girlfriend for more money, and he used Andrew Tate's treatment of this as the standard. What Tate told him he did, he said, I copied it. It worked amazing. And then he says, I'd rather kick the ass of the female with a stack of cash that she made me. And again, aren't these guys' statements, compatible with Islam? I mean, for any, and we're going to get to this in a minute again, for any Muslim person who platformed this individual, this stuff is not hard to find. You just got to have a will and a determination. Vlad would continue to brag in these war room chats about using Facebook profiles to lure girls in, build his image. He would basically, what he would do was get all these fake pictures of girls, pay women to be around him, and then he would market that. So the young guys would see it. They'd come to the war room. They'd come to Andrew Tate. I want to be like this guy. This guy did it. He learned from Tate. Look at him now. So it was, again, more psychological programming. He would also use his girls, the ones that he did acquire, to start fake relationships with guys, manipulate them, get those guys to give them money for their hair, their nails, for clothing, all through the internet. And he would make money on the side. Each girl, he estimated, he could make between $2,000 to $8,000 per month. If it was a good girl, as they call them, he could make over 10. So again, when you talk about judging someone, their ideology, you judge a tree by its fruits. This is what basically Andrew Tate has promoted, or not promoted, but produced. He's given us people like Vlad. He's given us people like Jonathan, the money pilot, another one of these famous individuals who is wanted for beating, forcing sexual assault, on women. And let's look at, again, some more of the quotes as we wrap up this section. Here's Tristan Tate, the famous brother of Andrew Tate, always side by side with him. It doesn't matter how good a father you are to your daughter. If you're not working an average job, and if you're working an average job, and not rich, he can recruit her into pornography. Andrew Tate was sitting right next to him smiling when he said this statement. So he's basically saying, if you're not rich and you're not a powerful man, I will take your daughter and I can make her do pornography. Again, what a wholesome message. He's on camera numerous times encouraging men to take the virginity of young women, and how promiscuous they are, encouraging men to manipulate them and turn them into the whores that they supposedly despise. So they're claiming in the core of their message, all women are like this, but then encouraging to take the good girls and also turn them into this. Tristan also states he uses violence and control over these webcam models or they will run away. So apparently he didn't read the mind control too well there. And that his mind was blown that more men don't do this. He's shocked. Why are more men not doing this? Why are they so stupid? Why are they so lazy? Why are they not like us? Another quote here, this one's from the king himself. I make porn. I made so much porn that I made millions. You consume porn. I'm God. This is Andrew Tate. I'm God. You're a bleeping loser. Learn how to make money by making porn here. Then he pitches, obviously, his website. Now, since he's converted, he still said those statements. I am God. And when cornered on this, he said, oh, that's just how I talk. I don't mean it literally. But you see him right here basically saying, I own you, I control you, you consume my pornography, I'm God over you. There's no other context that you can take this statement. Another quote here, everyone wants to be friends with a pimp. Doubt me. I have assets every man who's not a hating bleep wishes they had. And the next best thing to being me is knowing me. And the next quote, I don't even think I'm going to read. It is so laced with profanity. And he's basically saying all women are whores, pretty much. And they're obsessed with it. and the only reason you're mad is because you're not like him, and they're not doing it with you. Just 2 weeks ago, he's Muslim at this point. He says women are sex workers. Their primary job now is to find one customer, call a boyfriend or husband, to pay for their entire lives in return for, you can insert the blank there, it's a sexual term. If they fail at this, they do OnlyFans or porn. The same game with more than one customer. If they are ugly, they work a job and they are miserable. So if you're a woman who is not doing porn or OnlyFans or married to a rich guy, you're ugly and you're a loser and you don't even pretty much deserve to live, according to this. Now, in relation to that, I want to talk about what I saw when I was preparing this presentation. I saw a video from a young lady in Gaza, and she was teaching these girls in the rubble. I mean, she set up a classroom in stone. And for this man to say such filthy and nasty things, this woman was a sister. She was a mother. She was an inspiration. I mean, self-sacrifice, spending her time being creative, how to educate these kids in the middle of this disaster, in this tragedy where a lot of them don't even know where the next meal is going to come from. I mean, that's a true sister in every sense of the word. And she may have not had the beautiful facial symmetry and all the makeup and the plastic surgery that Andrew Tate supposed tens, as he calls them, but she was a 10 in here. And, you know, again, to speak on all women in this way, I mean, these are your mothers, these are your sisters, both in Islam and literally, I mean, your daughters. I mean, it's just beyond, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us as men to be the caretakers and controllers of women. We are made to be strong. We are made to be the head of household. And when the men become weak, the women get preyed upon by the men who are not weak, but the men who are sinister. And we as men have failed in our jobs, a lot of us, as husbands, as fathers, and role models, and whatnot. We are going to be judged, you know, in the end of the day, as men, in how we take care of women. All these guys, they want to brag, you know, about how they're strong men because they manipulated women. You know, men are supposed to be strong. We are supposed to be charismatic. We are supposed to be the ones that women look up to, you know, not this, you know, piece of trash that we've been covering so far. So what Iggy has created here, and Andrew Tate, is basically immortalized in Surah Baqarah 102, when it speaks of the angels Harut and Marut. And they're teaching magic basically to the people. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in his genius and his foresight, as only he could have, mentioned something very specific about the nature of this magic. It was to cause a rift between the husband and wife. And you see these guys are the living embodiment of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about here in verse 102 of Surah Baqarah. They are using this magic, this manipulation, these tactics to divide husband and wife. Because again, if you read those books, it's all about population control and making men miserable. Globally, the Zionists want the population down. Check. Those books get you untrusting of any woman. You're never going to want to engage in a marriage or a relationship. And then secondly, to use women as property to break the bond, breaking up the family, and again, the fabric of society. You know, this is the essence of what these men are bringing. So I want to ask now, you know, so he converts to Islam in October at the end of 2022. And we're going to see in this brief section here, did his behavior change? So I started seeing Andrew Tate in the summer of 22 walking around with a Quran. He recently started this kind of trend in his videos of glorifying Islam. But what Islam was he glorifying exactly? He was glorifying the Islamic stereotype that you get from Christian apologists that they've been using for decades. Sex slaves, multiple wives, violence. He famously stated, I like Islam because if someone insults you or disagrees, you can kill him. He famously said Islam is awesome because you can have all these women at one time. So again, selling the worst images, the lies that you get, not covering the responsibilities and the dignity of those in the polygamous households, but no, turning it into something dark, sleazy, sexual, just exactly out of the pages of the Christian apologist. So he's stating this is why he liked Islam. This is what brought him in, was you can kill people, you can have all these women around you and all these different, things. So during the height of his sex trafficking charges, we're not going to go into whether he did or not. I think we pretty much have already established, who he is and what he was about. He would always be holding the Quran up. When he would go through the interviews outside the courthouse, he was holding, the Quran up. And this right here is programming. Because now when someone sees this, rapist Andrew Tate, or rape charges Andrew Tate, there's a Quran. Islam, rape, Muslims, rape. This is all setting us up to what we're going to cover with the rape gang stuff next week. How they programmed for quite some time. He always wanted to make sure that when he was up there, you could see, look, he's got the Quran. Can you see it? There it is in English right in the middle. Muslim rapist. The online Muslim community, would they react to this? How would they react to this? MashaAllah. Andrew Tate, alhamdulillah. He's Muslim. And they lined up, like I mentioned in my opening. They platformed this man. Almost every Muslim podcaster, influencer, show host was eagerly lined up. And still, most of them defend him to this day. But a lot of them, what they do is it never happened. They don't mention him. They ignore it. They want you to forget. But we're not going to let them forget. We're not going to let the audience of these men forget. So did he change? Shouldn't we judge intention? Absolutely. If someone has lived a life of blasphemy, of sin, of violence, and they convert to Islam, we should, judge them by their intention initially. But when we have all this action after this, it's pretty safe to say we're looking at your actions. We know your intentions because you're showing them. There was in April of 2023, alhamdulillah, this sister anonymously, she was a Pakistani woman who lived in Europe. And what she did was she, like me, was questioning him from the beginning. So she found out, she went and tried to register for his PhD course, his pimping hose degree. And what she found was it was still open. This is 7 months into his conversion. The pimping hose degree course up and running, the content staying the same. All those activities we spoke about earlier with all those quotes still being said. And guess what? She was attacked by Muslim men. They called her names. They were using, even I saw some of the comment sections on some of her videos. They were calling her stuff that Andrew Tate was calling her. She's jealous. She wished she could be a sex worker for him. And these are supposedly Muslim men. We don't know. There's a lot of bots out there, but she was taking a lot of backlash. You shouldn't judge him, sister. He's new. He's learning. We're not asking him for an advanced fiqh ruling here. I think anyone who's read one surah in the Quran would know that the activities I described earlier are haram. And he said that he was in jail in 2022. He read the Quran every single day. So he's acknowledging that he supposedly studied, right? Not going to work here. So after this point, we've seen, since he's been Muslim, videos of half-naked females massaging him in their underwear, videos of him in his underwear, videos of him doing exercises with alcohol being prominently featured. One, there was whiskey bottles. I guess he's new and he didn't know alcohol was haram either. I guess he's new and didn't know that a Muslim man shouldn't be sitting in his underwear. I guess he's new and didn't know that Muslim men shouldn't have half-naked women massaging them while they're doing there. He also did a video describing in detail sexual acts with transgenders. He's done videos since this point calling himself God, and he's done videos calling Muslims who are asking him what he's doing. He's called them crybabies. Shut up, you're blocked. I don't want to hear this. You're harassing me. So we've seen that type of thing. He continues to promote vice, materialism, zina. He's arrogant, constantly demonstrates no lack of humility whatsoever. All the antithesis of traditional Islamic manners. He's misrepresented Islamic teachings, stating that basically Jesus is the Son of God in our religion. Again, you don't have to be advanced here. You don't have to read the works of Ibn Taymiyyah, as Sister Layla was mentioning before we went live tonight. You don't have to go that far to know that that is not an Islamic teaching. Now, he attended the Orthodox services for his brother, where there was a priest in the background with all the shirk and the blasphemies being said there, had no issue when confronted on it, was very hostile, blocking people. Again, he also, really key statement here, he slipped, I think. He referred to Allah as a concept in a famous interview. He was called out for this and backtracked on it. But he said Allah is a concept, not acknowledging Allah is real. He was saying that Allah as a concept keeps the bad people good. So he wanted everybody to believe in Allah so they wouldn't be criminals and they would be a little bit decent people, but it was a concept. So basically, indirectly denying the existence of Allah. Now, again, were there any Muslims, influencers, prominent ones that condemn this? Only a few that I've seen. One of them is a brother by the name of Sajid Liphem. He was one of the earliest, mashallah, for the courage. He got attacked, of course. You also had another brother by the name of Jake Brancatella. He also, as well, did some videos exposing this stuff, but he was only focusing on the anti-Islamic teachings that I just covered now. He wasn't going into all the private war room stuff. So we did see some. But then you had the big controversy. You had Muhammad Hijab, who is one of the biggest Muslim apologists in the world. He had said in an interview that Andrew Tate had better qualities than the Jesus of the New Testament. Now, when I heard this, I wasn't surprised coming from him, to be honest. He backtracked and said, you misquoted me. You didn't understand what I meant. That the Jesus in the New Testament is soft, he's weak. Andrew Tate is strong. And I mean, just even that is not correct, because the Jesus in the New Testament was willingly marching to be crucified with hardly any fear. So I mean, you don't get more tough than that. But just the fact that he would go and take a prophet of Allah and compare them to the man we looked at earlier, I mean, it's just shame on you. We as Muslims acknowledge the Injil, and we acknowledge that there's truth in those scriptures. And I'll be doing a series on this after Ramadan. Inshallah, we're going to be breaking down what exactly is the Injil, what we can prove from this. But again, if 1% of those books is the actual real Jesus, as Allah mentions in the Quran, it's blasphemous. It's blasphemous to compare the good car mechanic that fixed your car to Andrew Tate, much less, again, a prophet of God. I mean, just absolutely horrific stuff coming out of the Muslim community. And as I mentioned, I wasn't allowed to speak about him at the time. There were a lot of people who did not want me to go up on camera and talk bad about this man. I talked about some of the youth calling me a hater and saying I was crazy and I was a conspiracy theorist and all of these things, And what has happened now over the last few years is we've seen massive amounts of apostasy. A lot of these new Muslims, I would see them in the masjid. They were coming in there and they're quoting Andrew Tate word for word. I don't think they thought, because I'm an older guy, I'm not really that old, but and maybe you don't know who he is. And they were quoting his stuff word for word. I'm like, you got that from Andrew Tate. It's not your material. And a lot of these people are leaving. Why? Because what they were being presented about Islam is not what they were seeing. Oh, Andrew Tate's saying I get to be tough and I get to have all these women and I get to hit my women, all these things. They're getting in there. I got to pray 5 times. I got to fast for how long? I got to do all these things. I've got to give charity. I've got to smile. I got to be friendly. I got to be this. It wasn't for them, obviously. This is not what they signed on for. But what happened was false expectations brought them in. These brothers may never come back. And again, Allah knows best. Tate would later tweet he would have a Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Tateism with the greater than sign, saying Christianity greater than Judaism, Islam greater than Christianity, and Tateism greater than all the previous. And now we're seeing, as the brother brought it up last week, with what's happening in England, because Andrew Tate is now siding with Tommy Robinson. He's all of a sudden anti-Islam in England, where in 2023, November, he said this: England needs Islam to save itself from implosion. Would you rather your son come home and say he's Muslim or that he's transgender? But in January of this year, he'd say this: the UK will not be a tool for Islamists or Zionists. Both will be rejected. He later said, Islam out. The internet's eternal. When you were at the height of your Muslim popularity, you're tweeting one thing. Now you're trying to get more people for the war room, more people for this. So you're going after the right wing. So you're going out and hammering in right wing talking points. This is nothing but a grift, a way of making money. Now he says he's running for the Prime Minister of England. He's going to be the future Prime Minister. He's got his own party. Well, there's a problem with that. In order to be a political party, you have to register. And a lot of people did their homework. And his political party doesn't exist. So he's now fundraising for this, taking more, back to the quote earlier, liberating the money out of the idiots' pockets, making it obvious. I'm going for the right wing. You idiots are going to vote for me, but I'm not going to even be able to run. But you can donate to me and help my campaign and all these things. And of course, he's going to pocket. He already got them to pay $50 a month to pursue their pipe dreams, to be a drop shipper, and a copywriter. He's got you to pay $8,000 for his war room, only to find out you're going to buy more courses, from him. So now just donate to his campaign. He's come up with a fake crypto coin called Tate, which has no value. He's rug pulled his investors on that. And I want to leave our close on this with, again, all these Muslim influencers that supported this man have all, again, gone quiet, a lot of them. Let's not forget them. And we're going to talk about them over the next few weeks and months, who these people are. You can go to the internet and you can see it. The internet's eternal. You can see every one of these Muslim influencers that platform this man. It opened our children to his poison because they know, the Zionists, the ones that control, when they set propaganda, it's not for the old folks. We're set in our ways. It's not for the people in their 30s. It's for the kids. It's for the 10, 11, and 12-year-olds. That's who they care about. They don't care if me or Sister Layla or Ibrahim, Sheikh Ibrahim, if we disagree with this. They're going for your children. And as I went with those numbers earlier, just how high a percentage our children know who this man is. My kids know who this man is. I never taught them who he was. It's just how prominent a figure that he was on the internet. And we can never forget who these influencers are, who platformed this individual and who opened the door for the shaitan to come right in and misguide them. And on that, I will close. Thank you, Sister Layla.